Star Trek Deep Space Nine was the predecessor to this classic sci-fi show with 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, with its shared DNA from Ronald D. More, Star Trek Deep Space Nine can be seen as the predecessor of Battlestar Galactica's 2004 reboot. Both sci-fi series are acclaimed, with DS9 holding a 91% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and BSG even higher with a 95% fresh rating. Premiering in 1993, Deep Space Nine is a spin-off of Star Trek: The Next Generation that ran 7 seasons in syndication. Battlestar Galactica launched a decade later, first as a 2003 Sci-Fi Channel miniseries that spawned a 2004 ongoing series running for 4 seasons, as well as a prequel, Caprica, and spin-offs Battlestar Galactica, Razor, Battlestar Galactica, The Plan, and Battlestar Galactica, Blood and Chrome. Ronald D. Moore joined the writer's room of Star Trek Deep Space Nine after achieving great success on Star Trek: The Next Generation, including co-writing with Brannon Braga TNG's acclaimed series finale, All Good Things, and the feature films Star Trek Generations and Star Trek: First Contact. DS9 broke Star Trek's mold by being set on a space station and exploring darker, more complex themes than the cheerier TNG, with a broader canvas and a cavalcade of eclectic characters. Moore learned lessons from Star Trek but also found Gene Roddenberry's vision limiting. In rebooting Battlestar Galactica, Moore got to make a distinct sci-fi epic that did what Star Trek, not even Deep Space Nine, could not. Deep Space Nine's concept was the spiritual predecessor to Battlestar Galactica 2004. Star Trek Deep Space Nine evolved throughout its 7 seasons. The original premise of DS9 involved a space station led by Commander, later Captain, Benjamin Sisko, Avery Brooks, guarding the Bajoran wormhole to the Gamma Quadrant. Gradually, DS9 introduced its uber threat, the Dominion, and marched toward an epic war that engulfed and existentially endangered the United Federation of Planets. All the while, DS9 was about the journey within for its vast cast of characters, with a deeper exploration of their motivations and inner lives than Star Trek had seen before. Crucially, Deep Space Nine also pioneered serialized storytelling, foreshadowing the dominant form of TV in the streaming era. With the serialized Battlestar Galactica, Ronald D. Moore flipped the script on intergalactic war. The humans suffered a devastating nuclear attack at the hands of the robotic Cylons and were on the run. From Battlestar's inception, the human race was on the back foot, desperately trying to evade their Cylon attackers, facing constant infiltration, and searching for the fabled 13th colony, Earth. Like Deep Space Nine, Battlestar integrated military and civilian characters in intriguing ways. Battlestar Galactica was more free of the constraints of Star Trek, but still mindful of the need for complex, flawed heroes and villains that felt like a natural progression from his work on Star Trek: Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine and Battlestar Galactica both shared similar stories and themes. Star Trek: Deep Space Nine went places Star Trek: The Next Generation did or could not. Captain Sisko was the emissary of the prophets of Bajor, split between his duties as a spiritual leader and a Starfleet officer. DS9 delved into Bajor's religion, with elements of the supernatural that TNG only touched upon or generally avoided. As DS9 progressed, it turned into a series about the costs and complications of war, with Sisko and his crew pushed to make moral compromises that seemed unthinkable aboard the USS Enterprise D. DS9 was also steeped in politics and intrigue that could not be solved in a mere hour, while main characters like Sisko, LT Commander Yajia Dax, Terry Farrell, and LT Commander Worf, Michael Dorn, fell in love, married, and even tragically died. When Star Trek: Deep Space Nine DS9 debuted in 1993, it was unlike anything in the Star Trek universe before it. A bold departure from the formula established by its predecessors, DS9 laid the groundwork for a new wave of storytelling within the sci-fi genre. It tackled darker themes, serialized storytelling, and moral ambiguity with greater nuance. Little did audiences know that this ambitious show would pave the way for another sci-fi series that would garner massive critical acclaim: Battlestar Galactica, 2004. With its remarkable 95% score on Rotten Tomatoes, Battlestar Galactica owes much of its narrative structure, tone, and thematic depth to DS9. Both shows are cornerstones of the modern era of Sci-Fi television, sharing not only creative DNA, but a thematic resonance that continues to captivate fans. The shared DNA Ronald D. Moore, one of the most direct links between DS9 and Battlestar Galactica, lies in the influence of writer and producer Ronald D. Moore. Moore began his career writing for Star Trek: The Next Generation before becoming a key figure on DS9. His work on DS9, especially in its later seasons, contributed to some of the show's most defining elements: serialized arcs, complex characters, and morally gray dilemmas. Moore's experience on DS9 was instrumental in shaping his vision for Battlestar Galactica, where he would push these elements even further. Moore's departure from the traditional Star Trek episodic format was evident in DS9, where he helped weave long-term storylines involving war, politics, and the survival of entire civilizations. In Battlestar Galactica, these themes became central to the show's identity. The ragtag fleet of Galactica mirrored the refugee situation of the Bajoran people in DS9, and the overarching battle for survival against the Cylons had clear echoes of DS9's Dominion War arc. Moore's experience on DS9 allowed him to refine these ideas, making Battlestar Galactica a tightly woven and emotionally resonant narrative. Serialized storytelling, a break from episodic tradition. DS9 was one of the first shows to challenge the episodic nature of previous Star Trek series. While the original series and The Next Generation often returned to the status quo at the end of each episode, DS9 embraced longer arcs that developed over multiple seasons. The Dominion War, which spanned several seasons, gave DS9 an unprecedented level of continuity for the Star Trek franchise, allowing characters to evolve and change in response to events in a way that episodic TV often couldn't. This shift to serialized storytelling became a hallmark of Battlestar Galactica. Every episode of Galactica felt like part of a larger tapestry, with the ongoing narrative of the fleet's survival playing out over the entire series. Just like in DS9, characters in Battlestar Galactica experienced real consequences for their actions, and the storylines developed organically over time. This approach allowed for deeper emotional and psychological exploration, as characters had to live with their decisions, often in morally complex situations. Moral ambiguity and realpolitik. DS9 marked a significant departure from the more optimistic and utopian vision of Star Trek presented in The Next Generation. Where TNG was about a united Federation exploring space with a sense of optimism and moral clarity, DS9 presented a more complicated universe. The station itself was located at the edge of Federation space in the politically turbulent Bajoran sector. The show frequently delved into the messiness of post-colonial politics, religious tensions, and the gray areas of war and diplomacy. Characters like Captain Sisko, Kira Nerys, and Garak had to navigate difficult decisions that often challenged their ethical beliefs. Battlestar Galactica took this ambiguity even further, exploring themes of war, occupation, terrorism, and survival in the aftermath of a devastating attack on humanity. There were no easy answers in Galactica, and much like in DS9, the heroes often found themselves forced to make morally dubious choices in order to survive. President Laura Roslin's gradual slide into authoritarianism, the Cylons' struggle for identity, and Admiral Adama's tough leadership all reflected the moral complexity that DS9 had pioneered. Darker themes and emotional depth. DS9 was also one of the first Star Trek series to fully embrace darker themes, moving away from the typically optimistic tone of the franchise. The Dominion War was brutal and costly, leading to the deaths of beloved characters and casting a long shadow over the entire series. The show also explored issues like PTSD, religious extremism, and the personal cost of leadership, particularly through characters like Benjamin Sisko, who often struggled with his role as both a Starfleet captain and the Bajoran emissary.